There is a moment, right before dawn, when the sky is neither dark nor light. It has no name, it simply exists, quietly, in between. And if you are watching this right now, there is a good chance you are living inside a moment just like that one. Something in your life recently ended. A door closed. Maybe softly, maybe suddenly. And ever since, you have been standing in that in-between space, wondering what it means, wondering if you did something wrong, wondering if you missed your chance. You did not miss anything. What if the door did not close because you failed? What if it closed because you were finally ready to stop knocking on something that was never meant to hold you? Many spiritual traditions across many centuries and many cultures describe this exact kind of moment. They call it a threshold. A place where the old version of your life quietly ends, not with fireworks, but with silence. And in that silence, something is being prepared. Not later, not someday. Now. You may have felt it already. A conversation that suddenly stopped. A job that ended before you were ready. A relationship that faded instead of exploding. A dream that seemed so close, and then, without warning, slipped through your fingers. And in the days after, you likely searched for a reason. You replayed the moment again and again, trying to find the mistake, trying to find the missing piece. But some things are not puzzles to solve. Some things are seasons to complete. There is a reason this particular date, August 1st, keeps appearing in the reflections of so many people who study cycles, seasons, and spiritual timing. Not because it holds any guaranteed cosmic power, not because anything magical is promised to happen at midnight, but because psychologically, and for many people spiritually, the first day of a new month carries a very specific kind of energy. It feels like a clean page. It feels like permission. It feels like the universe quietly whispering, "You can begin again." And maybe that is exactly why you are here. Think back, just for a moment, to the door that closed for you. Maybe it was recent. Maybe it happened months ago, and the ache is still sitting quietly in your chest, waiting for someone to acknowledge it. You do not need to explain it to anyone. You do not need to justify why it still hurts. Endings are allowed to hurt, even good endings, even necessary ones. Here is something worth sitting with. Closed doors rarely feel like protection in the moment. They feel like loss. They feel like rejection. They feel like being left behind while everyone else moves forward. But according to many spiritual teachings, especially those rooted in trust and divine timing, what looks like an ending from where you are standing often looks like preparation from where you are going. Picture a seed buried in the ground. From above, nothing is happening. No movement, no sign of life. It would be easy to assume the seed failed, that it is stuck, that it is forgotten. But underground, in complete darkness, the seed is doing the most important work of its entire existence. It is breaking open. It is releasing what it used to be, so it can become something it was never able to be while sealed shut. You have been in the ground for a while now, and it has been dark, and it has been quiet, and some days it has felt unbearably lonely. But quiet is not the same as empty. Darkness is not the same as abandonment. Many people describe this exact period, right before a major shift in their life, as the hardest emotional stretch they have ever walked through. Not because nothing was happening, but because everything was happening, deep beneath the surface, exactly where they could not yet see it. You may have noticed strange things lately, small things. A number that keeps appearing again and again in places that feel too specific to ignore. A song that plays at the exact moment you needed to hear its words. A stranger who says something that feels oddly personal, like they were speaking directly to the private thoughts inside your head. A dream that felt more like a memory than an imagination. Many people interpret moments like these as synchronicities, gentle nudges from something greater than coincidence. Others see them simply as their own mind, quietly guiding them toward hope. Either way, something in you noticed. Something in you paused. Something in you whispered, "Wait, that felt like more than chance." You do not have to prove what it means. You only have to notice that you noticed. Let's go back for a moment to the pain of the closed door. Because pain deserves acknowledgement before healing can begin. Maybe it was a job you poured years into, only to be let go without warning. Maybe it was a relationship you believed would last forever, until one day it simply did not. Maybe it was a dream you built quietly, one small step at a time, only to watch it collapse in a single afternoon. In moments like these, silence becomes unbearable. You pray, and the sky feels empty. You ask why, and no answer comes. You beg for a sign, and the world stays completely still. But according to many spiritual perspectives, silence is not the same thing as absence. Sometimes, silence is the sound of something enormous being rearranged behind the scenes, in a way too complex to explain to you yet. Some people describe this as divine timing. Others call it the universe recalibrating. Whatever words you choose, the feeling is the same. Something ended, so something else could finally begin. Ask anyone who has lived long enough to look back on a painful ending with gratitude, and they will tell you the same thing. If that door had stayed open, they never would have walked through the one that changed their life. Maybe that is happening for you right now, and you simply cannot see it yet. There is something incredibly human about grieving a closed door, even when deep down, some quiet part of you already senses it needed to close. You do not have to pretend to feel grateful before you are ready. You are allowed to mourn the version of your life that did not happen. You are allowed to miss what you thought your future would look like. But somewhere between grief and hope, there is a bridge, and many spiritual traditions describe that bridge as trust. Not blind trust that everything will magically fix itself, but steady trust that you are not walking through this alone, even when it feels like it. You may have already sensed a shift beginning, a subtle lightness returning to your chest after weeks of heaviness, a moment where you laughed, really laughed, for the first time in a while, and it surprised you. A sudden burst of clarity about what you actually want next, instead of what you thought you were supposed to want. These moments matter more than they seem. They are often the first signs that the ground beneath you is shifting, even if the shift feels too small to notice at first. Many people describe the days leading up to a new beginning as strangely quiet, almost suspiciously calm, like the universe is holding its breath right along with you. And then, without warning, everything moves at once. Opportunities appear that did not exist a month earlier. Conversations happen that plant unexpected seeds. People walk into your life at exactly the right moment, almost as if they were waiting for their cue. You may be standing right at the edge of a moment like that. Here is something important to understand about closed doors, something many people overlook in the middle of their pain. A closed door does not mean you were unworthy. It does not mean you failed. It does not mean you are being punished for some mistake you made in the past. Often, a closed door means you were being protected from a future that would have quietly kept you small. Some people, when reflecting on old chapters of their life, describe a strange realization. The thing they lost, the thing that shattered them at the time, was never truly meant to be permanent. It was meant to teach them something essential, something they would need for the next chapter, something they could not have learned any other way. Maybe the relationship that ended taught you what real respect feels like, so you would never again settle for less. Maybe the job that let you go pushed you toward a path you were too afraid to choose on your own. Maybe the disappointment that broke your heart was the exact thing that finally made you brave enough to change. None of this makes the pain disappear, but it can make the pain mean something. There is a reason spiritual traditions across the world describe endings and beginnings as a continuous cycle rather than separate events. Nothing closes without something else quietly preparing to open. Winter does not exist to punish the earth. It exists to prepare it for spring. And spring never apologizes for taking its time. You are allowed to take your time too. If you are feeling that quiet shift as August begins, that mixture of nervous hope and cautious excitement, know that many people feel exactly the same thing at seasonal transitions like this one. It is not proof of anything magical happening on a specific date, but it is proof that something inside you is ready. Ready to release what hurt you, ready to forgive what disappointed you, ready to trust yourself again. Forgiveness plays a quiet, powerful role in this kind of transition. Not necessarily forgiving the person who hurt you, although that may come in time, but forgiving yourself. Forgiving yourself for staying too long in something that no longer served you. Forgiving yourself for not seeing the signs sooner. Forgiving yourself for grieving longer than you expected to. You were never behind. You were exactly where you needed to be, even when it did not feel that way. Patience becomes essential here too, especially the kind of patience that does not demand instant proof. Many people describe the earliest stage of a new beginning as almost invisible. No dramatic sign in the sky, no sudden miracle. Just a quiet, steady feeling of rightness returning, piece by piece, day by day. If you find yourself waiting for something enormous to prove that your life is changing, consider this instead. Maybe the proof will not be loud. Maybe it will be soft. A small decision that finally feels aligned. A boundary you finally have the strength to set. A goodbye you finally have the peace to release. Some people call this divine timing. Others call it personal growth. Both descriptions point toward the same truth. You are not the same person who walked through that closed door. You have changed. And because you have changed, the next chapter of your life is going to look different too. There is something beautifully symbolic about a new month beginning right after a painful chapter ends. Not because the calendar holds any magical power, but because human beings need moments like these. Small emotional checkpoints. Reminders that we are allowed to begin again, even after heartbreak, even after disappointment, even after losing something we never expected to lose. If August 1st feels significant to you, let it be significant. Not because a date can rewrite your story, but because you are finally ready to write the next page yourself. Imagine for a moment, looking back on this exact period of your life, 5 years from now. Imagine realizing that everything painful you experienced recently, every disappointment, every unanswered prayer, every silent night where you questioned if you would ever feel okay again, all of it was quietly preparing you for something you could not yet imagine. Many people who have lived through their own version of this moment describe an almost identical realization. The closed door was never the end of their story. It was the turning point they needed, even though it did not feel like a gift at the time. You may still be grieving. That is allowed. You may still have questions with no clear answers. That is allowed too. Healing rarely arrives in a straight line. It arrives in waves, some gentle, some overwhelming, each one slowly rebuilding you into someone steadier than before. If you have noticed small signs lately, quiet whispers that felt oddly timed, unexpected encouragement from someone who had no idea what you were going through, a sudden wave of peace in the middle of an anxious day, let yourself receive it. You do not need to explain it. You do not need to prove it to anyone else. You only need to let it comfort you. Trust does not require certainty. It only requires willingness. Willingness to believe that your story is not finished. Willingness to believe that the door that closed was never meant to be your final destination. Willingness to believe that somewhere ahead of you, something better is quietly assembling itself, one small moment at a time. You have survived every difficult ending you have ever experienced, every single one. That alone says something about your strength, even on days when you do not feel strong at all. As this new month begins, give yourself permission to release what you have been carrying. The guilt, the resentment, the fear that you may have made the wrong choice, the exhaustion from holding on to something you already know is over. Let it go, gently, at your own pace, without judgment. And give yourself permission to hope again, even cautiously, even quietly. Hope does not require proof. It only requires an open heart. If you take one thing from this moment, let it be this. The door that closed in your life was not a punishment. It was preparation. And whatever begins next, whether it arrives suddenly or slowly, loudly or quietly, will find you standing a little taller, a little wiser, and a little more ready than you were before. Before you go, take a moment and think about the door that closed for you. Maybe it was a relationship. Maybe it was a job. Maybe it was a dream you are still learning to release. Whatever it was, you are invited to share it gently in the comments below. Not to relive the pain, but to remind yourself and everyone else watching that endings are not the opposite of hope. Sometimes they are the beginning of it. If this moment meant something to you, if even one part of it felt like it was speaking directly to your life, consider staying a little longer in this space. There are more stories here, more reflections like this one, for anyone walking through their own season of change. And if you would like to be reminded, gently, whenever a new one arrives, you are always welcome to subscribe. Whatever door closed for you, know this. Something else is already preparing to open. You may not see it yet, but you will.